We want very open and candid conversation, and I mean, I think this board, that's the reason why this board wanted to have this work session, because we do have some concerns. So, not about the personnel, but about what has been happening, because when we've been in our budget meetings, Terry, this town is growing, and while the police, while we have other folks making requests, it didn't seem like your department was really keeping up in line, and we know what maybe those reasons are, and so that's why I think this is the opportunity now to kind of look at what you really need and what really has been happening in the department, so.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor Melendez,
Yes.
I did have Kelly Hoagling and Will Welch here tonight to talk about that final report piece, since they were
Sure.
the ones working on that, and then Terry provided his information about what he
Yeah.
felt like the future needs were. So if you don't mind, I'd like for Kelly and Will to go on ahead and present their information, and then we can roll into Terry's, if that's all
Okay.
right.
Sounds good.
So as you know, we wrapped up the project, the ribbon cutting, was in October of this year. And since that time, we've kind of been looking at a final payment request, wrapping up the budget and getting all of those things squared away. And so Will Welch is here tonight to review the budget. There's a memo in your packet tonight that outlines the budget versus actual, and then the variance to that, and he'll explain that more in depth.
So, y'all have a little worksheet that looks something like this, with variance report. So what we've done when we started the project, we set a budget, we set it early, and that explains why there are some underages, which is always better than explaining the overages. So if you go through and you look, and what I've done is created the lines that match the appropriation amounts. So for the Public Works Service Facility, the building itself, actual costs right now are a little bit over 13 million. So we are under that budget by 963,000 in round numbers. The 15th Street reconstruction, we budgeted at 1.5 million. It came in about 1.9 million. Most of that variation was in the getting under the railroad with the bore. That was painful, but that's what it took. The fiber optics, which was the off-site piece of the fiber optics that the town actually contracted for direct. We'd set a budget for 175,000. It came in about 121,000. The existing public works renovation, we budgeted at 125,000, and it came in about 141,000. And the demo of the parks, we set at 100,000. It ended up being about 29. The variation there was we had originally thought there was more asbestos and hazardous materials in that facility than ended up being. It ended up doing the remediation ended up being fairly modest, so that's what generated that savings. So overall, the project from the $15,900,000 budget is $700,000 under budget. A couple of things that I think bear to be explained. About 210,000 of that was in Excel fees. So at the time we set the budget, we didn't know if the town was going to have the, I always forget the term that Excel uses, betterment credits that would be applied to the project. And so we put the full cost of that into the project, and then when the town took the betterment credits, that ended up being money that wasn't spent. There was also about $120,000 worth of capital tools and equipment. When we set the budget, we weren't sure if we had to buy lifts, if there was going to be other big pieces of equipment. That's what I would call a reserve. It's money that we had there in case we needed it, but the intent was not to spend it, and we didn't. So that money is sitting out there. And then the rest of it is in really contingency and rounding to get to even appropriation amounts.
Do we have any outstanding bills right now?
We do. We have a final payment request from FCI that includes retainage for about $1 million or so.
So we still have a $1 million outstanding.
But all of
that's
this is
projected.
included, excuse me.
No, it's
The
that,
payment
I was gonna
request
say,
is,
everything's,
everything's
Okay, that's-
included in
that's
here,
included
just,
in here.
yeah,
Yeah, final
everything
payment.
is imputed into the numbers, so.
it's
Yeah,
low enough. I'm like,
I was like,
I
well,
thought we said.
yeah, I would have been standing closer to the
No.
door if that was what we were.
no.
Well, it says a retainer, right? It hasn't been paid.
No, it hadn't been paid.
It's a retainer.
Okay, gotcha.
You're okay.
Thank you.
So that's what you have, that's what we have left, is the $700,000.
Right, that will not be spent at the end of the day.
At
But we
least-
do have a few outlying
Right.
items that we need to spend money on for security, and there's like 5 other things. They're not real expensive, but they're a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, so we do
Well,
have.
plus there's this additional piece, which I'm sure
Right.
we'll get to, about
Right.
some things that have not been covered to date. So I'm assuming we could use that budget if the board so chose to move forward to complete some of these requests, we could.
Absolutely. So do you have any questions for Will or Kelly about final report there before Terry talks about what his needs are as far as the expansion?
I guess I don't know how this plays in as far as from the budget standpoint versus what you're gonna talk about with the expansion, but my understanding was that there were a few things that were cut from the original project. So how does that play into the budget? I mean, had those things not been cut, do we know where we would have been?
I can give you some numbers that I have now that'll kind of tell you where we would be. The things that were cut were 6 bays in our heated storage building. You know, in our heated storage buildings where we put all of our diesel equipment, our plow trucks, all of our large equipment. And right now, we're maxed out in that building, just the way it currently sits. There's no empty bays. And the price to add on to that's roughly around $993,000. I don't know what it would have cost if we would have done it initially, but I'm sure it's a little higher now.
So then my question would be, why would we, I mean, could we have perceived that we were gonna be that close, and why would we have made a cut such as this? Or who determined why we would make a cut like that?
I guess it's not, in my mind, it's not really a cut. What we did was we programmed the project, we made assumptions. We actually had a maintenance design group who was a specialist in doing public works facilities come in, and based on the equipment and based on the functions and based on everything else, we came up with the design. The site allows for the expansion, but that was all done prior to setting the budget. And originally, the thought was when we finish this project, there would be 3 bays empty. But now Terry is filling them up.
Well, and I think part of that goes back to, Will, is the cold storage. We went from 12-foot doors to 10-foot doors, so some of the equipment couldn't fit in there, so it has to fit in the other bays. Because they all need to be out of the weather and inside somewhere. So I think it all, you know, you cross this hurdle and there was another one, so I think that's all led to it. And the one thing that Tyler wasn't able to get me for this meeting is what it would cost to change those from 10-foot to 12-foot. But we are gonna have to strip the siding off of it, and we would have to, you know, cut into it and raise the doors another 2 feet.
Yeah, and I have not been involved in this process. Was out on the building and talked to him. While anything can be done, that building's not designed to have those doors.
And
so-
why wasn't it, when most of our equipment probably would have required a clearance of 12 foot? Why would we have created a building that has to secure 10 foot?
Originally, that building was designed to be an open shed. And so when the request came to put doors on it, the building wasn't redesigned, doors were put on it. So if you wanted the higher clearance, you could probably go and peel the front off the building like it was originally designed, and then you could get the bigger equipment in it.
It wasn't supposed to have doors when it was originally designed.
It was just
But the reason we decided to go with doors is to keep all the birds and the
That's right.
animals and everything out of there, because then they tend to eat up, you know, the hoses and everything else on the equipment. So we didn't wanna have it open to,
Right.
predators.
That was a change in the program. When the original buildings, it was gonna be a 3-sided shed, and then you had height for the equipment on it.
So question. Let's assume we needed 2 more storage space, I'm just making this up. We don't know the cost, well, we would know the cost of adding a bay, but we don't know the cost of stripping the front off and a larger door. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's the first question. Second question, if we had a larger door, would we also need the bay?
The heated bay.
It's a heated bay. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Would we need the heated bay
Yes.
if we had a larger door?
We said the same kind of equipment that would go in either one, so.
Or would we need both, or one or the other?
well, the way, I think if we could afford it, I would still like to add 6 bays to the heated storage. That way we know in the future, we're gonna have enough room, for additional equipment. The cold storage isn't as important. We could go, if we had 1 bay with 12-foot doors, we could get by with that. And garage door openers, because those doors are pretty wide and pretty heavy. And the guys trying to open those and close them is quite, I'm worried somebody's gonna get hurt trying to open them and close them, especially in the cold weather months, so. And so, it'd take, about 27,500 to put the door openers on. So, that would be 6 door openers.
So did you say you don't need the heated bays today?
No, we're maxed out, so if we buy 1 additional truck
Okay,
or 1 additional sweeper, then we don't have anywhere to put it.
but we don't have that in our capital plan for this year, I assume.
No. No. It would be something that we would have to decide, that's my number 1 priority. My number 2 priority would be to get rid of the recycled asphalt, because it's hard to plow around the buildings without disrupting the recycled asphalt. I mean, it's good for now, but as soon as we can afford to replace that, I would like to do that, and that's roughly $475,000.
And is that one of the changes that was made from what was originally budgeted
Yeah.
to? So I guess that's one that puzzles me. If that was in the original budget and here we are coming in 700,000 under budget, why was that cut? Do we know?
I'm gonna have to defer to others. I was never in on any of these conversations. I was not privy to any of the information, so I will have to rely on Will, Kelly, and Terry to answer those questions.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't say it was cut, it just was never in the scope. What got asked for, particularly in the unheated storage buildings, was to put doors on the front of the building, and and doors were added. I quite honestly don't remember, and Terry may have had other conversations that I wasn't in, where there was a request to have openers put on it, and no, I don't remember that. So, there was a request to put, because of the concern with the birds and things, to put the doors on. We did it.
I've been hearing about openers since October, since we were opening that
Yeah.
building, and I'm surprised why we still don't have openers for those doors.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are in January, and, I mean, those are not even a very expensive item,
Right.
so I don't even know what the holdup is, why we don't have openers on
Well,
those doors.
We could have put openers on, but if we wanted 12-foot doors in 1 or 2 of them instead of 10-foot, that would change everything. So there was no use putting the
Oh.
openers on without figuring out which doors we needed to increase from 10 to 12 feet.
But can we
Terry, I
even
know-
retrofit these?
Yes, by taking the siding off the front of the building, it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done. Not gonna be particularly easy, but it can be done, yes.
We went back to the doors, Terry, but I wanted to ask, I know we talked early on, probably at the grand opening or even before that, about why did they do recycle? Who made that decision? Recycled asphalt?
I can't tell you exactly who made the decision. I was
I mean,
under.
Was it the builders or the consultants?
I
It's
think
an
it-
owner's decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, the
And
contract.
I'm
so-
sorry, Terry, what'd you say?
It's an owner's decision, our decision that it was at the end of the day, and so I think that particular item with the recycled asphalt, it was a high price tag. Knowing try to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, the decision was made not to fully build it out with the complete asphalt because they thought, oh, well, if we go to a certain point, maybe it'll be okay. And that's, you know, now that he's living in the space and the crews are there, they've learned that it's otherwise, that it's not working efficiently for them.
But were some of these decisions made with somebody from, like Terry, as part of those conversations, so that there could be the input to say, here's what was planned, or here's what we're planning to cut, how does that affect, or, you know, you guys are the guys who are out here all the time working, because, no offense, I believe that you are a great consultant, but you're not in our public works facility every single day like they are, and I don't think that anybody, I mean, I don't think anybody in an outside department could go to another department and say, here's what we really think, because all the studies show, or blah, blah, blah shows, because it's those guys who work and work it, and they probably know, so I don't know.
So to give you a background of how the process worked, kind of from start to finish, initially we did a space needs assessment in 2014, and that was led by Wade Willis and I think someone from Parks. And then we hired Maintenance Design Group, MGD, to sit down with our liaisons, I think it was the supervisors of Public Works Department, correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, to kind of get a feel of what was needed in the space, what was the square footage, what kind of equipment would we bring over. And so they made a huge, beautiful document of all the things that would be needed, all the requests. And then ultimately there was check-in meetings that we had every single week with a design group that included Terry and the town manager as well, to kind of look over those budget items week to week to see what's working, what's not working, you know, how is the budget, you know, shaping out, and what items could be cut potentially if there was an expectation that there might be overages somewhere. So it was an ongoing process. Initial check-in with our staff was the first start of that.
I do remember having one, at one of those meetings when we found out that we were gonna have to cut some things. And I told Kelly, could we go back to the town board and ask for some more money? And he says, no, he wasn't gonna do that, so.
And
I
why,
didn't know.
but why was everybody trying to cut? Because you felt there was a budget dollar, that everybody
Right.
tried to stay within that initial budget?
Whenever we start a project, the first question you ask the client is, how do you want the budget spent? Do you want everything you can spend? Do you want to spend every dollar appropriated? Or do you want the lowest cost for the identified program? Those are two very different questions. In this case, what the answer from the client, from the town manager was we have spent a lot of time developing the program. We want it at the most economical cost to the taxpayers that we can provide. And that's what we provided. That's what we did.
So, you know, in hindsight, I mean, I ask my board, because maybe as we continue to look at projects like this, maybe this board needs to be more involved. I don't know, because I think this board would have rather have seen that come before us, because I think based on many conversations, they would have found the additional dollars to do it right the first time, because now we're in a position, right, where this is all great, we've come in under budget, but we also now have $1 million almost of additional identified projects that they already see, that yes, they don't need the heated today or tomorrow, but it's in the very near future, and it probably would have been, it's always more costly to do things on your initial build than coming back in and adding on. So I'm hoping that this conversation can serve as maybe a learning process for all of us on future projects, and how, you know, your board would expect to be approached and worked with, and you know, because certainly I think we would have appropriated additional funding.
Sure,
And
and
you
you know,
know.
we have, you know, we've had three very successful builds, you know, projects. We did the CRC, we did the CRC expansion,
Right.
and the police department.
Right.
So we've had, you know, and like I said, I haven't been part of those projects specifically, but knowing that those were all very successful. So we have one that apparently we've failed on in places, which, you know, I apologize for,
And Patty, I don't know that there's the word failure has to be, it's just something that, it's a new experience out here in the middle of the country, and not realizing, we all knew,
Mhm.
and I don't think we're ready to accept the fact that this town is growing
Oh,
the way it
absolutely.
is. I think we failed to accept that, and we keep looking for excuses to save money, when we ought to be looking for ways to spend more money to get the job done. I know, that's my blowing off, but, I think we have failed in doing that, and we've done it with roads, we've done it with water, and we keep accepting it. And so I think it's time that we change our attitude about that. Okay, that's the end of my speech.
Okay, Ken?
2 points. One, the learning lesson here with our new town administration. I would, we don't want to get involved in micromanagement and day-to-day operation of things, so forth. But I think when there's issues like this that could have spending implications for the future, that might be a criteria we suggest to the two new town managers, that if it might cost us some more money in the future, we save some now, but it might cost us more later, that's something we ought to kind of know about. I wanted to clarify my understanding of what Terry's talking about in terms of facility needs. What I think I heard you say is the bays that have the garage doors are okay if we added openers. But you would prefer to have the heated bays. I'm trying to separate
I would rather
either or
add an additional 6 heated bays to our heated storage building.
versus tearing off the facade, the front.
No,
and
we would
adding
still
garage
need
door.
to do that to incorporate a couple pieces of equipment over there as well.
We'd still need to increase from 10 to 12-foot doors?
10 to 12, but we wouldn't need to add heat.
Okay. So we need to do both, is what you're saying? In some numbers,
Mhm.
okay.
I think the other reason the recycled asphalt came up, we had a lot of recycled asphalt around out at Diamond Valley that we needed to get moved and get rid of. We had a lot of streets that we were milling, that we were getting recycled asphalt. And I think the decision was made, instead of paying for permanent asphalt, let's use the recycled asphalt that we have. And, which, that's fine, but it is a problem when we're out there trying to plow around the buildings and stuff, because it's peeling up all of that recycled asphalt, and then we have to, after we're done doing that, then we gotta go back and grade it and put it back in place, so but my number one priority would be to add the 6 bays on.
So we have the vehicles for the 6 bays now?
No,
When will we have those? When will we have the equipment to fill those 6 bays?
probably, we're in need of another snow plow now. We have a Bros broom coming that's in our capital budget.
Saw that.
So, we're gonna be filling up a couple of those within the next couple of years.
So, but those are, all this machinery is not stuff that necessarily needs heated storage, it just is in there because it doesn't fit in the cold storage?
No, it's in there because it needs heated. It's all diesel equipment, and we can't leave diesel in a cold environment because the diesel engines won't start unless you have plug-ins for all of them.
So, what's the equipment that's in heated storage now that was intended to be in cold storage but doesn't fit because of the doors?
A tractor that we use to mow with, and one of the trailers that we house the sewer cameras and stuff in.
So those two could move to the cold storage with new doors, and we'd have 2 bays for heated for the future.
Yeah,
Short term.
short term.
Well, they're keeping some of these over at the machine shop, aren't they, right now?
Yeah.
So that they're still inside?
And so we're having to move them in and out because Fleet, when they get a bigger piece of equipment in, we gotta move some of that equipment so they can work on whatever they're working on, so.
But overnight, that's what happens now.
Right.
And that was one of the operational things, was Fleet had bays that if you needed warm storage, you could move some of the equipment into Fleet to keep it warm at night, and then it could go out and operate during the day.
That was designed that way.
When we were there for the Christmas, I think it was the Christmas party, that was the one, the chili.
Yep, the chili cookout.
That's when I, during the day, got to actually see the
Yep,
whole thing, because
right.
the other opening was in the evening.
Yep.
The heated storage where you're talking about looks full to me.
Oh, it is. It's
It
full.
Like, I don't know how they get some of the trucks in and out of there with some of the walls the way they are, and there not being a garage door right in front of them.
We
It's-
have people guiding everybody back and backing them in, but we gotta put them that close in order to get everything in there.
Right, right. So having 6 would alleviate some of the congestion that's
Right.
already in there now. But make it a little bit more feasible for,
So kind of going back to our budget issue, this budget was set based off of the number of heated bays that we have. And it was based off doing the recycled asphalt. And it was based off the 3-sided shed and,
Correct, and then we ended up getting that done as part of the project.
okay.
So we don't have a total cost estimate for all of these needs. I mean, we've got some numbers, but not.
We've got everything but
The doors.
the doors.
And then
At
you also
12
have
foot.
your small list of items as well,
Right.
the smaller list.
And just a couple of caveats, because again, I have not been involved in this, but the FCI guys who've been doing the pricing, it also doesn't include soft costs, indirect permits. None of that's in those numbers. So
Right.
there's no design fees, no testing fees, no city fees, town fees. None of that kind of stuff is included in there.
It's just the hard cost.
Correct. Excel, there's more stuff than just the direct cost of the work.
And the one other thing that, it's a little indirect to this, but we don't have any money budgeted to mow all of the landscape in and around the new facility. Originally, that was gonna be done by Parks. I've talked to Eric and Wade, and they say they don't have the time to do it or the manpower. So we'll have to contract it out this year, but I don't have any money in the budget to do it. So,
I had understood that Eric had asked you to put some money in to contract that out before the budget, to do that in I-25. That's what Eric had told me.
no,
Okay.
Do you have a mower?
not to do that. All of our mowers are big things, and that'd tear up the sprinklers and everything out in that landscaping. We do have, in the capital budget for next year, we do have a tractor and a mower, so they will be able to take it on in the future. But no, he didn't have me put anything in the budget prior to budgeting, because we were all under the assumption that Parks was gonna take care of it.
I guess that was just a little bit of lack of communication.
you're talking about the area not behind the fence, but everything from
Everything
parking lot of
happened-
the facility out to the county road.
That's right.
So it's not that much, is it?
It's
It's a
quite a
few, it's a
bit.
chunk.
Is it? I'm just,
I mean, the site's 25 acres, we disturbed about 19 of them. So it's about 6 acres you're talking about.
well, who takes care of any of our other facilities that the town owns? Don't our own people take care of all our
Yeah.
other town? So why wouldn't we have Parks and Rec take care of Public Works?
So part of the problem is the type of grass that was seeded, that it's very hard to maintain. Yes, it was a decision, Wade did allow the decision to get made to plant this type of grass, but it is very hard to maintain, and so it takes extra time to work on it. I talked to Terry, I've talked to Eric, and again, there must have been a lack of communication from what I understood. Eric had asked Terry to put another $5,000 into his budget to contract for that purpose, so they just don't, is the number of parks that they have and things and the type of grass that it is, he just felt like it was something that their department couldn't take on right now.
But don't we in the summer hire these temporary summer help to help
We
maintain?
do have seasonals, yes.
So I
and
say
I don't
we
know
make
that.
sure that we get an extra, a seasonal person and accommodate this. I
Okay.
don't think would be that, it seems ridiculous that we make that department have to kind of figure that out when we've got a department that is supposed to be in charge of all of our mowing.
What kind of grass would be planted that's like exotic or something like so? Is it
I don't,
like some kind of
I'm-
native grass or something?
yes,
Native
yes, it
grass.
was a
It's
native
It's a
grass.
native dryland seed.
Yes, thank you, Will.
That actually, I think Parks wanted.
Yeah.
Yes, I have been
Parks
through
So
that.
hopefully we get to mow it less, maybe.
Yeah, well,
Right,
Because
and
it's
long term,
probably,
Yeah, there's an establishment period. I think
Yeah.
their
It's-
concern must be the establishment
Yeah, it's
period.
the 3 to
Because
5
this was
years.
done, this was what they asked
Mhm.
for, so this is what was done.
Mhm.
And
So Terry, are we talking about $5,000 that Eric thinks should be added to the budget, but that doesn't include the seasonal help that might have to be added? Am I correct with that?
I can't
I don't
believe
know
it costs
about that.
$5,000 to
Well,
own
I-
that piece of property in our spring and
I
summer
don't
months.
either, that's why I'm asking the question.
If it does, I mean, maybe I need to
I
go
think this
check out
year,
that job.
with it being brand new, it'll probably have to be mowed twice, this next summer.
Yeah,
Maybe after this first year, it might have to be done 3 or 4 times during the summer. But, you know, it's not gonna be like you do turf grass where you have to do it once a week.
It just
Part of
sounds
this
like it's-
maintenance thing is this,
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. This product it kind of weed proofs itself. So that later you have fewer invasive weeds on it. That's
That
the
makes
beauty of this product. It's those first couple of years getting it established, I think, which is.
Right.
what
And you
makes
have to
it-
manage the type of weed that's growing with the grass and make sure that you're getting rid of any bindweed or something that's growing in with the grass, because that'll smother the grass out.
Well, and I'll also just kind of state an obvious thing here that is kind of an elephant in the room about this. The reason that there's the amount of turf area between the county road and the buildings is because the Greeley main water line goes right through there, which had to be avoided so much, et cetera, which is why there's so much open, you know, that's why the whole facility is not closer to the county road. So it was part of kind of the lay of the land on how we had to use that that's led to this piece.
And
It's always more of a
usually,
debate about whose budget does it goes in.
And to
Sure,
be
use
honest,
the labor.
this was included in your original work session memo about staffing. And I felt that this was an internal issue to deal with, and I'd hoped that we could handle it internally. So, saying that, I will
Right.
make sure that it gets mowed,
yeah.
no matter
I mean-
what it takes.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I'm not
This is
sure,
not the
Getting in the weeds.
Right.
Well, I don't wanna
Miles.
be pitting one department against another,
Right.
No.
and that's what was
No.
happening.
Seems a
So I,
easy solve
if possible,
solution.
if you don't mind, Madam Mayor, I can take care of making sure this gets mowed.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
we'll
think that's
get it
what we
done.
need to do.
So another quick question about the turf and everything. Are we using non-potable or potable out there to irrigate?
Non-phosphorus.
Non-potable.
It is non?
Yeah, it's got a well.
Anything new that we're
Yeah.
doing.
I didn't know about the well, that's all.
Get a couple goats if you
Yeah,
have to.
I'll go to,
Goat
we could do yoga,
Yes.
Okay,
yoga
back-
with
back to
the
the
goats.
facility stuff.
Baby
These
goat
big
yoga.
items.
These bigger items. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you add them
okay.
up and they're easily about 1.5 million,
yeah,
not
right,
including what
right,
will.
I
So
know.
let's get those
And-
final numbers, and then we can
Yeah.
present
Well,
them.
yeah, I wanna hear what
Yeah.
Ken,
Okay, sorry.
I'm still a little stuck on the either or. That sounds like we need some of the, do we need all the 10-foot doors to be expanded to 12-foot?
no.
Okay,
I think we
That's
can get
what-
by, I'd have to talk to my staff,
okay.
but I think we can get by with just one building.
And probably right now, today, we don't need another bay.
In the cold storage?
Yeah,
No.
The heat.
No, that, you're talking about the heated
I'm
storage.
talking about the heater, for the diesel
Today.
today.
Well, we're completely full right now.
You're full
But we
right
don't
now.
need anything right now, but,
If you had one more right now, how would it change things?
well, it would give us more room to park what equipment we have in there.
Back to Paul's thing.
Yeah, right.
Paul's
It's full.
comment.
I
We're
mean,
not
it's-
gonna-
We're moving
we're not
two
gonna
things
rent
out
any
of there.
equipment, we're not gonna run over an employee, right?
You just have to go out there
Okay.
during the day and see
All right,
how crowded it
But he
is.
said we can move 2 things into the cool storage with these new doors.
okay.
And you put a piece of equipment in fleet.
Yeah, we're jockeying equipment around as we speak. I mean,
Okay. Well, I'm gonna throw out just, slap me if I'm jumping the gun. We've got 700,000, that doesn't cover everything, but we could probably put in one additional bay right now. That would free up some of the equipment. And if we do the garage door openers on some of the 10-foot, because you're saying you don't need all of them,
Right.
to 12.
but I'll leave this, Will knows more about this than I do. I think in order to add one bay, we're shooting ourselves in the foot again
Because of the cost.
because of the
Okay.
cost associated
wanted
with
to
just
throw it out.
one
Yes,
bay.
you- we
You're
are.
losing any economy of scale.
Right.
at one
Okay.
bay.
what's the minimum then?
Yeah.
You know,
Is 6 kind of?
probably replicating that building would make logical sense.
And then you don't really have any design if all you're doing is saying, we want to repeat that.
Yeah, exactly.
Here.
And that's the way the site's designed. Again, the building was programmed to be built in the future, so
Right.
it's all programmed to take.
It's all gonna go to the
If we do it
west.
6,
Sir?
you're saying that
That's
if
with the
we add
direction they
something,
go.
add 6,
I
don't.
would think
gotcha.
add 6, because that's a good module.
Towards the west,
But
northwest,
you would have
towards
plenty of
the.
space.
Yeah, we'll add on to the west end of the building, and that's where we would.
How
have-
many bays are in the heated storage right now? If we're replicating.
6.
Yeah.
3, 6, 9.
9 bay, I'd see. 4,
Sounds about right. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks about right, as
because there's probably 11 pieces of equipment.
Yeah,
in about 9
scattered
bays,
across
that's about right, cause
Yeah.
it looks full. I mean,
it. I walked it today, it was full.
So I guess it sounds like to me, and obviously I wasn't part of the process because this started long before I was on the board, but it sounds like there was some sort of misstep between the needs analysis and the plan that was put together that the budget was based on. And so I guess to me, that's, my concern is, you know, I mean, I know we've grown since that needs analysis was done in 2014, but it seems like we missed the mark pretty badly if, you know, less than 6 months after the grand opening, we're already in need of this much additional space.
Even if we don't need them today, it concerns me that we're filled to capacity the way we are, even if we don't need them today. And I'm not sure what we all saw and what we were presented, and if items were cut after what we, because I think some things were cut after what we saw. And that would be, my concern is if that, I mean, again, just moving forward, if there's gonna be some major thing, because I think that, I mean, obviously, we're not talking, you know, $20,000 here, we're talking over $1 million of things, so I think it is major things, I think Cindy, I think you're right, that that conversation at least should have come back to the board and had the board look
And,
at something.
and that makes sense, I think that times that has happened, on some of our major projects. I know it happened, I was more involved with the town hall remodel, and I know we came back a couple different times on that, because things were, you know, once we started getting into things, we had to change things up, so I know that came back before the board. So I think that's good direction for your new
Will
town
we-
manager, like Ken mentioned.
I'm sorry, Pat. Will we remind us, how much were you told no by,
How much what?
how much money were you told no by the former manager?
Again, that's not really how the process went. It is reiterative, you know, it pushes and squeezes depending on where we were working. We actually, quite honestly, we actually felt like we were providing the town with a great project and a lot of flexibility. I think that, again, what was identified is that 3 spaces needed to be heated. We thought we left 3 spaces, and part of that is assuming that some would go into fleet. The pieces that are going in that were from unheated storage, that did get accounted for.
I said that to ask another question. Patty,
Okay.
how long do you think it would take us to come up with the actual figures of what this would cost?
I don't know if we're waiting on the FCI
Yeah.
doors.
and Tyler's not present out at the site anymore, so
Yeah.
I've been hounding him, but
Mhm.
he's busy with other things.
Mhm.
But he can probably get it to me within the next 2 weeks.
Okay,
My only concern is, I mean, and obviously none of this stuff we can do till spring or
Right,
warmer weather, either,
right.
except for, I think the one thing that maybe we should look at, because it concerns me, because you mentioned maybe staff could get hurt, is something about the door and the openers, and making those manually having to be open. And I don't know if there's a decision that you could make, knowing that some things might change, so that we aren't spending, you know, I mean, would it make sense to retrofit at least 1 or 2 of those, or does that not make sense again, from a cost efficiency?
If the concern is the openers, putting openers in half the bays or 2/3 of the bays, that's somebody appropriating money. That's not technologically challenging.
Is that something we could do internally, or do you
Yeah.
have to contract it out?
Yeah.
No, we could get an overhead door
Yeah,
company.
the overhead door, my recommendation to you is you have a brand new facility, you want the same overhead door guy
Right,
Mhm.
messing with your building.
perfect.
So you don't mess up the warranty.
Well, how much is it just to put 10 to 12-foot doors on all the cold storage and add garage door openers?
That's what I don't have, is what it's gonna take to move them from 10 foot to 12 foot.
And there was, and I have to, again, I have not been involved in that, but my understanding was there was a lot of other things that were working there, and I can't remember whether there was talk of heating that building. They,
Initially, we were gonna heat it, and then we weren't gonna heat it.
yeah, and so there's been a lot of vacillation there. FCI is a great contractor, they need direction, they need to know exactly, they gotta be told exactly what to do.
Sure.
They'll price whatever somebody wants. But again, their question is, are they going to be the contractor? That's one set. If you're just asking them to provide budgets, that's kind of another set, honestly. And not to say, FCI did a great job, I'm not taking anything away from them.
I'm certainly hearing that why change contractors when they've already worked with all of this
Oh, yeah,
facility, and they would know how and be more astute in doing it.
my recommendation to you is they know the building, they still have the warranty on the building. You get other people in, starting to monkey around, I think it would not be all that pleasant of an experience.
But if this board appropriated at least the 27,000 for door openers, and not even that all of them are gonna be put in, because maybe noticing now that there may be some changes, you did whatever you think is of best use. Could those, if all those change tomorrow to 12-foot, could those be retrofitted, or do you need a substantially different garage opener from a 10 or a 12-foot, or do we not know?
It would change, if
Oh.
only if you visualize, you got a 12-foot door that's going horizontal, so the opener's gonna be here. If you have a 10-foot door, the opener's gonna be here. You gotta,
You need more of a high lift door opener than
Yeah.
a normal lift.
Okay.
yeah.
But even you aren't advocating we change out all of them anyway.
No, I think we could do one building, you know, as 12 foot, leave the others as 10 foot, and just put door openers in the other one. That way, we would, the one building that we're always getting stuff in and out of, we would store everything in that building. The stuff that we don't use that often, we put in the building where we have the 10-foot doors. It's, you know, we can work around all that.
Well, I wouldn't have an issue with allocating funds to put openers on the doors that are going to, for sure, stay 10 foot. But I think any door that has the possibility of needing to be retrofitted to 12 foot, we should hold off on openers, just because you hate to waste that money for a
Right.
temporary
Right.
solution.
Exactly.
This goes back to my time on the board by a couple years, but when the town started to set money aside to build this facility, was enough being set aside to see where this project may come in as far as the budget or the scope or any of that? Because this was the project Windsor built, paying cash. We got $1.5 million DOLA grant, which is great, but it's also the $1.5 million that we're off right now. Was this really a $12.5 million project that really needed to be a $14 million project with a, you know, because obviously when we set into this whole project, and I don't know at what point the DOLA grant got awarded into this whole, you know, scenario, and so obviously hindsight's 20/20 on all this. But I'm just trying to connect the dots to how we got to such, I guess, a disparity on where we're at with all these numbers and everything.
I guess I've got to give a little, so I do this for a living, I do projects for municipalities, I do this all the time.
Sure.
This project was built using what the consultants and myself and the staff and everybody thought were the best practices for the project.
Mm-hmm.
And for the town of Windsor, again, we could have built a project 4 times as much, and in 2 years, everything would be full. That's the reality of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of questions that were asked about, is this enough? Because, you know, we were looking at the rec center, and then looking at that.
Right.
And we asked many times,
Yeah.
are we really considering enough money. And I remember those conversations, and so I think we were careful about it, but we weren't sure, and we were trying to get it done with the money that we had, so I think some of that became a problem, Paul.
And I guess I cannot recall a meeting where the tenor of the meeting was, we're getting shortchanged. I don't ever remember that conversation.
I agree with that, Will.
I don't.
Well, not from us, because we were,
Yeah, no, I'm not,
no.
oh, yeah, no, I'm not
As to
talking,
what was
I'm
being
I'm talking
decided.
about the project
That was
staff,
being,
yeah.
many of those
Yeah.
decisions were
Yeah.
kept from this board.
Well,
Yeah.
and I don't,
Ken? Oh, sorry.
Where's the $700,000 right now?
where is it? Just sitting?
Out there?
In our
Okay.
bank account.
Yes,
Mythical
So
place.
we have-
Or in Dean's back pocket, I don't know.
He is everything.
So we do have $700,000 if we wanted to work with something right now. And
Yes,
anything
I don't
again
see
that
why
we have
not.
to figure out.
My concern with that is we've
Yeah.
established a 2018
We-
capital
right,
improvement plan
Right.
based on that 700,000 being
Being
in
in
the
there.
bank. So I don't know how.
We
that-
have?
We did, how would we do that?
No,
I
I
don't know
don't
that
think
we
so.
know that we even had that
Because
money
we
left.
thought we had spent it.
Yeah.
When we did the budget, we thought it was.
Yeah, we did, we
Yeah,
just got
we
these
don't
final
think
numbers,
so.
so the
this
700 is kind of,
700,000 is not
right,
dedicated to
appropriated or
anything else.
dedicated to
It's not
anything at this
dedicated or
point.
appropriated
It's
for
where you
anything
wanna
else
put
right
it
now.
now at this point.
Yeah.
Now, as we've seen checks being paid out over the last however many months, they're coming from different funds.
Mhm.
Right.
To make up this difference, and maybe this is a question for Dean, this isn't obviously for probably everybody sitting around the table right now, but do we have enough money in these different appropriated proportionate funds that we were pulling money out of to make up the difference that we could get this done sooner? I don't know that we know that answer, I'm just asking.
Right, well, I'm sure.
Whatever those funds are, we've been paying FCI and everybody else
Right,
out
I'm
of.
sure we do. I mean, we've got the 700 in whatever funds, whatever
Whatever.
collection
Whatever
of funds.
proportionate
Right,
distribution
right,
it was.
we have that.
Right.
Water, sewer.
That's what I mean, it's coming out of all these different
Right, we
funds,
have,
and I mean,
right, and that's, so if it was budgeted, it's still there.
so
in
maybe
those
it's a response
respective
from Dean
funds.
as to what or how we could pull from different funds, maybe
All
to,
we have to do is do the payment request.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not, it's not
Transfer
a,
funds
it's not.
Well, and I
rocket
think,
science.
first of all, I mean, you know, we have to see exactly what the real numbers are
Sure,
gonna
sure.
be for us to make.
I'm just
a
thinking of how we
decision.
get over the.
I think the
Oh,
question
speak.
is,
There's Dean.
are there some intermediate initial things that the board, or do you think would help, like with the door openers, that we could easily allocate, because we're talking less than
Yes.
30,000?
I think what
Door openers.
Cindy said about the
Right.
door openers, any door that will remain at 10 feet.
So do you wanna hear from
So-
Dean, where we can get the money?
I was watching
He's out of breath.
He's upset because I said it was in his
Okay,
back
So-
pocket.
So first of all,
We heard you were going to.
if we wanna allocate the 30, what, I mean, do we simply say we wanna allocate it, and I mean,
Let's hear
if
from
what,
Dean first.
well, no, I know we have that money, I'm not the full, but do we don't have to pass a
We have to have board
resolution or
action. Does it
something,
take
do
board
we?
action?
No, it's-
At the, we don't have it currently in the 2018 budget,
Right.
but we can go ahead and spend it and do a supplemental budget later in the year.
Okay,
So I had the question, I was under the assumption that the 700,000 that were under budget was allocated for in the last budget, and,
Yeah, it was.
um,
Yeah.
so that's different than what we.
It's different, yep.
It would be the same thing though, if you want to, if you want to spend it on something, you can, and we can.
But it was allocated but not spent,
Right.
so it's still kind of, you weren't using that money in 2018 for something different,
No.
okay,
Okay,
No.
good,
okay. So we're not gonna cut some other project?
Correct.
That, okay, that's what I was,
or dividend reserves or something.
yeah, okay.
So the question about different funds we could pull out of if we end up getting final numbers back on what retrofitting the public works facility would require.
Yeah. We split it between the water, sewer, and general fund. So that's what we would do the same thing. The general fund by way of the capital improvement fund.
Okay.
And all have pretty good balances in them.
Is any money in those funds earmarked per se that we would need to be careful that, you know, we couldn't take that much out of one fund and it would have, you know, I mean, I know you're the numbers guy, so that's why I'm asking.
When you say earmarked, you say you mean for other projects?
Yeah, that there's something else that needs to come out of the water fund or sewer
Water
fund
fund,
or
yeah.
something like that.
We have a bunch of projects in all of those funds, but like I said, we plan for the ending balance to give us some cushion, so if we wanna do something like this, we can go ahead and do it.
Without hurting another project.
Not infringing on
Not
anything else.
infringing on
This is
other-
its
yeah,
own
that's
separate little pot
That
of
was the
money.
question you
It
raised.
would on an unknown project if something comes before us.
Right, because we got plenty of other things we could be
Right.
doing for the community, but yeah.
I was just wanting to know that answer so that depending on what comes back, we could make an informed decision.
I don't think we're gonna have time to get into the employment side.
No, we don't. I was just looking at our calendar to see if we could move it to maybe another work session.
We might be able to push it on to the 5th. I don't think golf cars will take long, and the regional route study and business plan is about 20-25 minutes from what I understand. So if you want to, we could push it to the 5th, if that would be the
I think that would
amenable.
be better than
Yeah,
giving them
we need
all
some
5
That
hours.
means you
There's
give
no
it
way.
the attention it needs.
Yep.
I agree.
A question I'll have about that, so you can be prepared, is of the positions you're asking for, Terry, I want to know which ones were already existing in 2016, 2017?
I have
You
that
know the answer to
information
that,
for
right? I
you.
know you do. So that's the question I'll be asking at the
Right.
time.
Okay.
So quick question before we wrap up on the facilities. What was, and maybe we don't have these numbers offhand, but what was the amount of space prior to the new facility, and what's the amount of space you have at the new facility?
We had roughly 11, a little over 11,000 square feet at our old facility. And the new facility, I can't remember what we got for square footage now. The Fleet is a lot, you know, Fleet's its own building, which, that's our biggest building. You know, and with 200 and some odd vehicles,
9,100.
they're working on 6, 8 vehicles at a time. So,
Oh, it's not-
um,
it's broken down.
you know, we definitely have more square footage, but everything is kind of in its own place now instead of all together.
I
Which
think
makes
you're-
it-
I think you're close to it's like 50,000, something like that.
That's probably pretty close.
And we shared it with
Yeah,
Parks.
so you're,
Yes.
yeah, I think you were close to 5 times the space.
And so
So
where
I
do,
guess my question is, what all have we added that we've
Well,
quadrupled the amount of space and we're still busting
at
at
our
the
old
seams?
facility, all of our plow trucks sit outside and were plugged into an outside plug-in. And so when the guys came in to get in the plow trucks, they'd have to scrape the windows,
Right.
defrost the trucks, all of that. So now those trucks sit inside and they're nice and warm when they get called in and then go straight out and start the routes.
And doesn't that go back to the diesel operation of the vehicles too?
We just have to plug in.
so where did we leave off? I guess we left off with allocating at least the 30,000 for you to proceed with some door openers.
And I'll
And
get those
we
costs.
don't have to pass something, do we?
No.
We can just make
We'll
that
just report that
allocation
it's
and.
done.
Not like that.
We
Okay.
can
On,
report
on,
when it's
on,
scheduled
on
and
whatever
report that it's
doors
done.
need to not be retrofitted down
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Is that the price per door, or is that
That's
Pardon?
27,000 is total price or price per door?
That's the price for all the door openers
so it
if
should
we're
be-
gonna do
All
all
of
6
them.
doors.
It will be less then.
It'll be
It
less.
would be less.
Less than that.
It'd be half of that.
Okay.
It's like $4,500 a door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal.
And so to end on, at least on a positive note, because we
Yeah.
are debriefing about it,
Sure.
is, you know, at least the folks in our community that have shared with me, really, I mean, they like the new facility, they think that, you know, it's a wonderful
Right.
addition to Windsor. I think we all agree that the location serves the town well. We were proactive in the location and the size so that we can, allows for us to grow in the future years.
Absolutely.
And so I think and I think the design and at least the layout and from everything that I've seen, it's a great building, it's a great addition.
It's a
to
great
the town.
facility, it really is.
Yeah.
I would just add one quick thing. I was in church yesterday with one of the bus drivers, And he said, it's so nice not to have all of it around now, because we're able to operate now much better than what we were. And so I just threw that in. That was a church conversation.
Now Patty, part of what we were talking to them about, that was it 150 that we retrofitted the new, the school building?
The new
Is
parks.
that the?
Yes.
So I thought I heard you say, oh gosh, in some other meeting, we can get, I mean, we anticipate the school to pay that back to us, that 150,000?
They have to sell it back to us. Ian found the contract. They have to sell it back to us at fair market value at that time.
Right.
So it won't be, we can't take the remodel
Oh,
cost of it.
but we'll get something
Oh, yes,
more than
yes.
just what our, because we have a very small
Right,
agreement arrangement.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
contract says that they
Okay.
have to pay us a price per square foot at whatever the going rate is at the
Okay.
time they want it in 2020. Now, they will hire someone to come in and appraise it, and if we don't think it's a good appraisal, well, then we can have someone do it on our side and then meet somewhere in between.
So that would be some additional monies
go
coming in
for-
as well,
Yeah, when the
that could add on to the $700,000 perhaps.
Yeah, we have not received a formal letter from them yet. Once we receive that, then starts the 2-year
Okay.
countdown. I will let you know when that comes in.
At that point, we'll need to look at acquiring space, new
That's,
space
and that's
for
what
parks.
Eric is doing now, is investigating some options and checking with other municipalities and see how they do it and things like that. So I assume that will again be another long process.
Right.
School
And Dean,
So
Dean,
that
we
also
also
said
have
that it goes into this
alert
because
us coming down.
And we
Oh,
asked
wherever they go.
Sooner's better.
Well, thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So no meeting next week, and then on the 5th, we'll bring Terry back on those two other items I mentioned.
And I have all the cartograph from what we did last year added up, so
Okay.
for just streets department, and it comes to 8
I
employees.
wasn't planning on the move.
We only have 5.
I think I read that.
Okay, so